Hi, let's hear the rain fall and have a cozy bit of Nancy Drew. This is The Clue in the Crumbling Wall, Chapter 1. Great drops of rain pelted the sidewalk as Nancy Drew raced madly toward home, her golden hair flying in the stiff breeze. This is going to be a bad storm, the girl thought, glancing up anxiously at the boiling black clouds. All along the residential street, people were running to shelter. Doors and windows were being closed hastily. The summer day had been unusually sultry, but now the air was chilly. The wind blew in strong gusts, whipping the trees and bushes wildly. A large branch from a maple crashed down directly in front of Nancy. A woman on a porch saw the girl and called to her anxiously. "Won't you wait here until the storm is over?" "Oh, thank you, I'll make it all right," Nancy said in reply and hurried on. She took a shortcut through a neighbor's driveway, arriving breathless at her own home just as a jagged streak of lightning cut the sky behind her. It was followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Hannah Gruen, the Drews' middle-aged housekeeper, met Nancy at the door. "Thank goodness, you're home safe," she cried in relief. The kindly woman cared for the motherless girl as lovingly as if she were her own daughter, and worried a great deal whenever she thought harm might befall her. The rain, which lasted for 20 minutes, came down in such torrents that for a time everything was blotted from view. When it ended, Nancy gazed ruefully from a window at her garden. She was dismayed to see the tall hollyhocks snapped off near the ground. Clumps of painted daisies were flattened in the mud. "My lovely garden is a wreck," she said to Mrs. Gruen. "And, why, my goodness!" The girl dashed out of doors. The housekeeper followed, wanting to know what the trouble was. Nancy stared in consternation at the flower border. "My beautiful new roses," she gasped. "They're gone." Where 4 choice bushes had been planted only the week before, there now appeared 4 gaping holes filled with water. "I suppose the wind," began Mrs. Gruen. "I'm sure it wasn't the wind, because the bushes would be around somewhere, and they're not," Nancy objected, already searching the garden. "I planted them very deep anyway. I'm afraid they've been stolen." "But who would take them?" asked the housekeeper. "I don't know, but good rose bushes are scarce this year, and ours were rare specimens." "The police should be notified," Hannah Gruen said with determination, and went into the kitchen to telephone them. Nancy continued to gaze about the garden. Except for the rose bushes, no other shrubs or plants were missing. It was very mystifying, and even more so when Mrs. Gruen appeared to say that the same kind of loss had been reported by other people. An investigator would be sent to the Drew home to make an inspection. "There's no question but that your rose bushes were stolen, Nancy," the woman added grimly. "And I'm afraid they won't be recovered," sighed Nancy. "Unless you should decide to search for them yourself," Hannah Gruen said with a twinkle in her eye. "As a detective, I'd certainly favor you over anyone on the River Heights police force." Nancy smiled at the compliment. Modest and unassuming, she never would admit she possessed any particular talents. Nearly everyone in River Heights, however, knew that the girl was as clever as she was pretty. Over a span of a few years, she had solved many baffling mysteries. As Nancy and the housekeeper busied themselves gathering up debris from the garden, they heard the familiar song of one of River Heights' well-known characters. "Here comes old Me Hardy down the street," Nancy laughed, shaking off her somber mood. "Do you want me clams today?" "I do not," Mrs. Gruen said with emphasis, "but if I know Me Hardy, he'll probably talk me into buying some anyway." The old man, once a sailor, had received his nickname from Nancy when she was a little girl. He often addressed other people as "Me Hearties" and sang nautical songs, including these words. Little Nancy had gotten the whole thing mixed up and called him Me Hardy Man. Her nickname had stuck to him. Me Hardy was a good-natured, lovable person, full of yarns of the sea. An injury on shipboard had kept him on land for many years. He dug clams in the nearby river and sold them for a living. The man's cart bell tinkled merrily, and a moment later the jolly, weather-beaten old fellow rounded the corner of the driveway, wheeling his little wagon. Spying Nancy and the housekeeper, he began to carol. Clams by the bushel, clams by the lot, clams for the kettle, clams for the pot. None for us today, Mrs. Gruen called, starting toward the house. Old me hearty smiled his most winning smile. Real cheap today, he coaxed. You can't turn down my clams, me hearties. Why, my clams are nutritious, my clams are delicious, my clams are delectable, my clams are respectable. Nancy laughed, when Mrs. Gruen said seriously, I'm in no mood to buy clams, respectable or otherwise, right now. We've just discovered that 4 of our best rose bushes have been stolen. You don't say, the old man's blue eyes roved to the gaping holes in the flower border. Now that's what I call bad luck, ma'am, but you can turn it into good luck if you've a mind to. How, may I ask? By buying me hearty's good Muskoka River clams. And in what way would that help? Why, you might find a pearl in one of 'em. The old fellow chuckled. Then you could use the money to buy a dozen rose bushes. Did anyone ever find a pearl in one of your clams? Nancy inquired curiously. Just ask Jasper Hawkins on Pinewood Point, the old man boasted. 'Twarn't a very big pearl, nor a very valuable one, but a pearl just the same. Jasper sold it, too. Upon second thought, remarked Mrs. Gruen, I believe I could use a dozen or 2 of your clams, me hearty. Nancy, please run into the house for my purse. The girl darted away, returning with a pocketbook and a container for the clams. After the old sailor had gone on down the street, singing about his wares, she and Hannah bore their purchase into the spick and span kitchen. I wish we could find a pearl, Nancy remarked, smiling. What I couldn't do with a little extra cash right now. Then suppose you help me open the clams, the housekeeper suggested, handing the girl a sharp knife. Maybe you'll find a pearl. I've heard that somebody in River Heights once found a large one in a Muskoka River clam. Then there's a chance for me, said Nancy, starting her work with gusto. Have a care or you'll slash off a finger. That knife is sharp, Hannah Gruen advised. Nancy nodded and paid close attention to her task. Soon she had a pile of empty clamshells, but no pearl. Bother, she exclaimed impatiently. I don't believe me Hardy's clams ever have anything in them but meat. I'm glad this is the last one. Cutting it open, Nancy glanced carelessly inside. As she was about to toss away the shells, a tiny object in one of them drew her attention. Scarcely daring to hope what it might be, she examined the shell. Embedded in it was a small white object. I have found a pearl, she cried, holding it out for the housekeeper to see. The woman stared at the pearl. I declare, it is one, she acknowledged, and it may be worth money. I'll take it downtown to old Mr. Weatherby and ask him, said Nancy eagerly. Sam Weatherby was a dealer in curios and odd jewelry. Bubbling over with excitement, the girl removed the pearl, washed it, took it to the old man's shop. Once there, she was annoyed to have to wait 15 minutes while an unpleasant man bargained with the shop owner over the price of an antique watch charm he hoped to sell. At last, the customer pocketed some money and turned on his heel, remarking, I might as well have given it to you. That was Hector Keep, the lawyer, Mr. Weatherby remarked to Nancy after the man had left. How he loves to argue. If all my customers were like him, I'd have to close up shop. Well, what can I do for you, Miss Drew? Removing the pearl from her purse, Nancy asked the curio dealer for an estimate of its value. Well, well, the man said, examining the object carefully. Pretty nice. It's worth a fair sum. Where'd you get this? From the Muskoka River clam. A look of astonishment spread over the man's face. In a few minutes, he mumbled, I once bought a river pearl from Jasper Hawkins, but I never expected to see another one so good. You'll buy mine? Nancy asked eagerly. I will, and pay you a good price, too. If you bring me the shells from which it was taken, I want to display the pearl with them. The dealer smiled. I suppose now we'll have a rush of folks digging clams. Nancy replaced the pearl in her pocketbook and hastened from the shop to get the desired shells. So intent was she upon her good fortune that she failed to observe A strange-looking young man who had been standing outside the shop and who now followed only a few paces behind her. Unaware of impending trouble, Nancy carried her purse lightly under her arm. Presently she passed a department store on a street thronged with shoppers and gazed into the windows. The man drew closer to Nancy. Then, so suddenly that she scarcely knew what happened, he jerked the purse from beneath her arm and fled. Chapter 2. Heath Castle. It took Nancy a moment to recover from her astonishment. By the time she whirled around, the purse snatcher already was running down the street. The girl dashed after him, trying to avoid bumping into pedestrians. "What's the matter?" asked a man she sidestepped just in time. "My purse!" He took up the chase with her. As word spread, other people followed, but the thief was fleet-footed. Nancy caught a faint glimpse of him as he dashed into an alley and over a fence, but not enough of a glimpse to identify him. She did note that he was very young and that he wore ill-fitting, bulky clothes. Nancy stopped. "Not a chance to overtake him now," she said unhappily. Then she added, "Well, there goes my pearl." Besides the pearl, her purse had contained a vanity case, a lovely lace handkerchief, and about 70 cents in change. "I suppose I should be thankful I didn't lose more," the girl decided ruefully, as she thanked the strangers who had tried to assist her. Nancy walked on down the street. The Central Police Station was located at the next intersection, and on impulse she stopped in to report her loss. "We'll do what we can to help you," the desk sergeant assured her, writing down the information after he had heard her story. 2 thefts in an hour from one person. That's quite a record. Nancy left the place without much conviction that the stolen purse would be recovered more readily than the rose bushes. Arriving home a few minutes later, she was surprised to find a young policewoman in uniform talking earnestly to Hannah Gruen. "Nancy, this is Lieutenant Masters," the housekeeper introduced her. "She was sent to investigate the theft of our rose bushes and has mentioned several facts that will interest you." Lieutenant Masters was a charming woman, not the least masculine despite her businesslike manner. She had been placed in charge of juvenile delinquency in River Heights only a short time ago, and already was having much success in her work. "Our chief speaks very highly of you, Miss Drew," she complimented Nancy in a rich, cultured voice. "Also of your distinguished father. Your last case, I believe, concerns the secret of the old attic." "Grandfather March's," supplied Nancy, smiling faintly. It was fun solving the mystery of that queer old place, but I'm afraid the newspapers overplayed my part. "I'm sure they didn't," replied the policewoman, smiling. "Isn't it true that you've been interested in mysteries ever since you were a little girl?" "I can't seem to resist them," Nancy admitted. "They fascinate me." "Her father encourages her," spoke up Mrs. Gruen. "Mr. Drew, you know, is a lawyer, and now and then he has a mystery he turns over to her to solve. One of her first cases was written up in the newspapers as the bungalow mystery. Since then, I've lost count of them." "I haven't solved them alone," Nancy said quickly. "My friends Bess Marvin and George Payne helped me." She added that George was a girl, and a very active one at that. "At any rate, the chief gives you credit for real talent," the woman smiled. "Now, for the case at hand. You have no idea who may have run off with your rose bushes?" "Not the slightest." "I may have a clue. They probably were taken by an 8-year-old child." "By a child?" Nancy exclaimed. "Yes, the case is a strange one with mysterious angles. Please tell me about it. I can't see why a child would want those rose bushes." "The girl in question has a passionate love for flowers and an amazing knowledge of them. In recent weeks, she has taken seeds, plants, and even shrubs to satisfy her longing. I've already told Lieutenant Masters that we'll not prefer charges against the child," Hannah Gruen explained to Nancy. "I feel that her parents are more to blame than she is." "Joan's father's not living," the young officer resumed. "Her widowed mother is ill and very poor." "Then please forget that we ever made a report of the affair," Nancy requested. "No, I'll see that the bushes are returned to your garden. It is best that Joan do that. Mrs. Fenimore will insist upon it anyway, for she's greatly distressed by her child's strange behavior." "There must be a reason for such queer actions," commented Mrs. Gruen. "There is," nodded the policewoman. "If I had more time, I'd probe the mystery of the Fenimores." "Mystery?" questioned Nancy alertly. "I'm on my way to their house now," Lieutenant Masters smiled, pleased to note Nancy's interest. Why not come with me? Then you can hear everything firsthand. I'd love to go. Nancy rode with the young woman to the Fenimore cottage, which was located in a poor section of the city and which was greatly in need of repair. The tiny yard was a mass of flowers, however, and the vines tumbled considerately half covered the unpainted tumble-down porch.